Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Youth Rights Podcast. I am your host, Zane Miller. You've known me from all the previous episodes, and today we're here with two other NYRA members, and we're going to be focusing on parental oppression of LGBTQ youth and the negative effects that it has on their life. Y'all want to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
I'm Ramon. You might have heard me on the Devin Price episode. I am trans, and that impacted how youth rights has kind of been an issue in my life, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, my name is Bailey McCoy, and I am the one who will be telling the main story for today's podcast about the LGBTQ rights. And so, as a basic summary, I have a friend who is 16, and his mom is hurtful and judgmental of his identity as a transgender person.
All right. Well, do you want to just kind of talk about what they've gone through and what they've told you about, their experience and how their parent is discriminating against them?
Yes. So he is transgender, like I said, and when I met him, he became my best friend pretty quickly. I met him in March of 2025, and I was going through hard times, and it was during my senior year, and this friend of mine became really good friends with me, and then he came out as transgender in July of 2025, and I was there for him. I supported him, but his mom, unfortunately, has never supported it and has always been judgmental due to religious beliefs, and she doesn't even call him by what he identifies as, doesn't want other people calling him by what he identifies as, and it's just very hurtful for him to deal with and go through. And so whenever I'm talking to him, I always call him by his preferred name and pronouns. And when I'm around his mom, though, or whenever I'm talking to his mom, I have to call him by she, her, and stuff like that to avoid his mom getting upset at either of us.
Do you want to talk about more instances of the specific ways that she's been, discriminating and putting down your friend?
Yeah, so I mean, from what my friend has told me, there's been times where she has physically and emotionally abused him, and there's been multiple instances and incidents of her just treating him very poorly. And to make matters even worse, she works in the cafeteria of his high school, and so that does not help at all, because then he can't even rely on school as his safe space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big issue. You said physical abuse? What was she doing to him because of that?
Well, from what he's told me, she's hit him, not with objects, but with her hands. Mm-hmm. And one time, even when it was around Christmas time, she had hit him in the head with a roll of wrapping paper, which may sound funny to most at first sight, but the way that she is to him, it was not funny.
Yeah.
And also, I remember in August of 2025, I had actually helped him file a CPS report because he can't stand being with her, and he can't stand being hurt the way she hurts him. And so he gave me the information to file a CPS report, and literally CPS took 2 weeks, saw him at school one time, and didn't do anything else after that.
Wow. Yeah, that's ridiculous. I was doing some research the other day, or yesterday actually, into failures of CPS to intervene and why they do that. And there was a Supreme Court case called, I think, DeShaney versus the court, and it was where a kid was being abused by his father, and, CPS took him into custody, and then they figured, they were like, oh, it's safe now, and they brought him back to the father, and then the father ended up abusing him so badly he had permanent brain damage. And the court actually ruled that the state they weren't required to they weren't held accountable for that. It wasn't the state's fault that the dad, abused the kid in the way he did afterwards, because at the time where that happened, the kid wasn't in the custody of the state and it was in the custody of the parent. So it gets to a point where it's kind of setting a precedent that CPS can only be held accountable for things that happen within the home if they're actually getting involved, which, in my opinion, kind of seems like they're incentivizing CPS to not get involved and to not intervene in the situations that they should be intervening in to protect the kids, because then if they intervene, then they're liable. But if they don't and something happens at the home, then, they can't be held liable for that. So it's a very interesting way that, this organization should be protecting young people, but a lot of the times they won't get involved, and it takes like a lot to get them involved. And I feel like that's such a huge flaw within that system, is the way that they don't get involved when they need to.
I would also add that we currently, in some states, that it is more precarious for queer kids, especially trans kids, because in certain states now, parents can be prosecuted for affirming their child.
Mm-hmm.
That has been classified as child abuse.
I saw something about that. I think it was in Texas or something. They made a bill about that. Like,
both Texas and Florida, I believe, currently, and maybe Kansas as well. I need to double check on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's ridiculous, because it's like, they're trying to help their child, they're trying to be there and be supportive, but then the government is just kind of stopping them from that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That a lot of times this comes up, or the way that they get these laws on the books is surrounding trans healthcare for minors, which makes it a youth rights medical autonomy issue.
Yeah.
Even in states where gender affirming care for minors isn't banned, they still require parental consent for it, which means that effectively, even in the best case scenario, the ability of trans children to get the care that they need is dependent on whether their parent is informed enough. It's effectively trusting parents' ignorance to stop trans kids from transitioning.
There's been a lot of legislation recently, and I recently updated a webpage on our site about this, is parental notification laws. So if a kid is at school and they want to go by a different name, like an alternate name or pronouns or something, the schools are then legally required to inform the parents about that. So if a kid is, maybe has a conservative family, like, you said your friend did, and, want school to be their safe place where they can have their identity, but they don't want to have that at home. If they tell the teacher, hey, call me by she, her instead of he, him, then the teacher legally has to tell the parents about that. And that causes such a major issue with, like you said, there is abuse that kids face from that, like emotional, physical, and they face these things very severely from these types of parents. And then the government, again, just ignores that. And they're like, oh, but the parents deserve to know. But it's like, if they're going to abuse their kids, no, they don't deserve to know, at all. And it's such a terrible thing that they're doing, to act like these parents should be the be all and end all of what kids are allowed to identify as.
Even outside of abuse cases, it's a basic privacy issue. It's that kids are not trusted with being able to form their own identities outside of what they are to their parents. And that should be concerning to everybody.
Yeah. And it really just reflects that idea that young people are seen as property of their parents. That it's anything that you do, your parents has to know about it. You're not allowed to have this identity or these beliefs outside of your parents. So you have to be reported to them because of it. And it's just, I feel like that's just such a wrong way to believe about, because kids, they're smart. People act like young people shouldn't be able to have their own ideas and opinions and beliefs about themselves, and that, the parent should have this control. But young people are a lot smarter and a lot more competent and know themselves better then other people know them, but they just get denied that autonomy so frequently.
Yeah.
And like some of these, I mean, like these notification laws, states have been doing a lot towards making like social transition highly discouraged. And that is effectively state-sponsored conversion therapy. Like the idea that a lot of the ways that it gets framed is like, oh, they should see a therapist before socially transitioning, and then the therapy that it gets recommended on the state level for that is effectively conversion therapy. It gets called by other names, but that is what it is. It is like using therapy to effectively abuse a child into not being trans anymore, which does not work and is also bad.
Yeah, for sure. And I wrote a whole article about conversion therapy and why it's wrong, and the statistics that come out of it is insane. Over half of the kids that come out of it came out feeling more suicidal and like worse about themselves and having increased mental health issues than they would have before they went into it. And it's like it wouldn't even turn them, like, it's not like it can just turn them not gay or not trans. It's just going to make them hate themselves for being that way. And it's the government basically saying, we're going to bully kids into hating themselves so they follow our traditional ideals. And that's just such a wrong way to believe. And a lot of times it's not the kids, they don't have like a choice in going into that. It's the parents either forcing them into that, or it's, like you mentioned, with that being the therapy that's recommended by the state. And it's just, again, such a terrible way that the government is just, instituting this oppression over LGBTQ youth. But yeah, Bailey, talk more about the CPS case and what you told them, what you told CPS to try to get a case filed, and then what happened in response to that.
What I did was I went ahead and like I said, I got all the information from my friend that CPS would have asked for, like identification information for both him and his mom and everything like that. And he also told me like specific scenarios of times where he's been physically or emotionally abused by her. And so I called CPS and told them everything. And prior to that, I even started telling my friend that he needs to document these incidents, like on a Google Doc or something. And he did start doing that. And he sent me the Google Doc back then. And so I also sent that to CPS and called them, made the report and everything. And at least here in California, when you make a report, you don't get to know from the CPS people directly, like what the outcome is or what they decide to do. And so my friend was the one who told me everything that happened. And he told me that the CPS worker came out to talk to him. And it was about 2 weeks after I had filed the report. And they came out to the school to talk to him. They told him that they'd be talking to his mom next, but he never heard anything after that. And nothing else happened. And it's bad when a kid wants to go into foster care and to get away from their parent. That's when it's bad.
Yeah, of course. And the fact they didn't do anything about that. So the CPS, they never like contacted his mom or never like went further with an investigation or anything?
Yeah, that's as far as we both know, because his mom never said anything. And if CPS would have contacted her, she would have probably gotten mad at him in some sort of way or said something about it to him. And another thing is that, like I said about that incident around Christmas time where she hit him in the head with a roll of wrapping paper while she was mad at him. What happened at that point was he had told me that he wanted to run away, but that he has nowhere to go. And I asked what had happened, and that's when he told me about the wrapping paper situation. And I was like, did she just do it like just now or today or whatever? Because if so, that needs to be reported to the police. And he said that it just happened a couple hours ago and that he can't call the police because she'll hear him. And I said, maybe you can go like step outside and make the call outside real quick. And he said, I can't go out this late because my mom won't let me go out this late. And it was only like 7 p.m.
Wow.
And he was saying that he can't go out that late. And so I was like, do you want me to call them for you? And so I offered that, and he said, sure. And so I called, and then I called the police. And from what my friend told me, about an hour or two later, the police did come out, but they were like basically belittling him, saying that there's food and a roof over his head, so there's nothing they can do. And they even tried to tell him that it would be kidnapping if they took him, and that it's up to CPS and to call them if it gets worse. And so that seemed crazy to me, because it's like, why are they like belittling him basically and
Yeah.
talking down on him like that?
Yeah, of
And so
course.
then the next day, he told me that both his mom and his grandma were like yelling at him, blaming him. And his grandma even tried to say that hitting him isn't illegal and abuse is illegal, and hitting is
Mm-hmm.
considered abuse.
Yeah. And a lot of the times there's weird laws around, like, because technically corporal punishment from parents is legal in in a lot of states. And the laws around that are really weird. And a lot of the times it's something like, if they leave a mark, it's illegal. But, if a parent is like hitting a kid with like wrapping paper, it's like that's going to be painful. But, it's not going to leave a mark in the same way that it's like hitting with the bare hand would. So it's like maybe the same amount of pain, the same amount of abuse. But then if the police hear about it, they don't take it seriously. They're like, oh, that's not a big deal. It's just that. And then it leads to, but I feel like if a parent is out here hitting a kid, no matter what, no matter if it's with a hand, if it's with a belt, if it's with a thing of wrapping paper, that's still wrong, and that shouldn't be allowed. That shouldn't be something like the police should always take the kid's side in that situation, like every single time. Because if a parent
Exactly.
and if a parent does something like that once, they're gonna do it again. Because they know they can get away with it. If the police tells them, yeah, no, that's legal, it's not really abuse, you can do that, they're gonna do more and they're gonna do more and they're gonna keep going thinking they can get away with it. And a lot of the times they can't. And that's the big problem with that is just parents, they get too much power over how they can treat their kids. And I had a situation like this somewhere in my life where like my parents are divorced, so I didn't want to go see my dad because he was really crazy for like a period of time. And when he was trying to like make me go with him, he like grabbed me and tried to shove me in the car, and I ran away and I ran away and I booked it back to the house and like got away from him. And then we called the police about that. And the police were like, yeah, no, him forcing you and trying to shove you, that's not abuse. It's like technically he can use force to try to like get custody of you since he has custody of you during that time. And technically under the law, it's the same thing as like, oh, a parent picking up a screaming 2-year-old and putting them in a car seat. It's like under the law, it's the same thing, even if, I was like 15 at the time. Which it's like those laws are just like insane because they treat young people like they're just again property of their parents, and the parents can just do whatever they want. They can hit them, they can abuse them, they can get away with it, and the police just won't do anything about it. And that's just it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it really, really is. It's very unfortunate, and it really, as we have been saying, it puts kids in a lot of fear, causes
Mm-hmm.
them trauma, causes mental health issues, and in many cases, and in increasing cases, causes suicidal ideation.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I've known a lot of young people, a lot of my friends who they had suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideation, and a lot of that came from their parents and the environment that they were growing up in. And they get put on meds for it and like antidepressants and stuff like that, but that doesn't solve the problem because they're not depressed because of their brain chemistry. They're depressed because of what they're living in. And it's like unless they get that cure, and the cure is removing them from that situation, they're still going to be, just feeling terrible all the time. And that's just something that's not recognized a lot. And these parents aren't held accountable for how they're just like destroying their kids' mental health. And I feel like there's elements of that CPS don't look at a lot because, I was doing some research on what CPS considers to be legal child abuse. And a lot of times, if it's like physical child abuse, like going beyond what's considered a corporal punishment, and then like sexual abuse, obviously, and then like neglect. And technically, in some cases, they do have the ability to intervene if it's considered emotional abuse. But emotional abuse is such a subjective thing that it just depends so heavily on the caseworker. Like some caseworker could hear about, what your friend's going through about being, yelled at and belittled for being trans. And then if a caseworker hears that, they're like, oh, that's not enough to remove them from their family. Like that's not a big enough issue. But, if it gets to the point where it's ruining someone's mental health and making it to where they would rather leave and rather run away when they don't even know where to go, like that is such a big issue that, they should be taken away from their parents because of that.
Exactly, because they're going to be left traumatized and they are going to feel like they have no escape, no safe space, and it's just absolutely terrible for the kids that have to endure that kind of stuff.
For sure.
The ambiguities about what constitutes neglect or emotional abuse can also be weaponized in the other direction. That especially like parents of color who like disproportionately have like stereotypes about being bad parents are that can be weaponized against them of like alleging child abuse because of some innocuous incident, as well as I mentioned, laws that can charge parents of child abuse for supporting their trans children. The system is meant to enforce one specific standard of parenting that is both in some ways too permissive of abuse and in other ways condemns things that are not abuse as abuse.
For sure. And I like, Bailey, what you mentioned about how they wanted to run away, because I was talking to a lot of people who feel that same way when they're in a situation where they want to just run away and they want to go to another home. And the thing is, there's such strange laws about running away, and a lot of places have what are called status offenses, where the minor can actually be charged with a crime for running away from home. And a lot of other, and I think most states have a law about like harboring a runaway or interference with custody or something like that, where if they, let's say like your friend goes and they run away to like their grandma's house or something, if the grandma doesn't report them as a runaway, the grandma can get charged with the crime. So then if they report them as a runaway, the police are going to come there and basically say, you have to go back to your parents. You have to, like, and the only way out, like legally out, is through that CPS system, is through that filing report. But again, like you said, y'all tried that. Y'all tried to contact the police. Y'all tried to contact CPS. And in neither of those things worked. So your friend doesn't have a legal way out because CPS and the police just don't deem it as an issue that deserves that. But to your friend, it is. To your friend, it's something that's like they want out, and it's like they're trapped. And I feel like a lot of the times young people aren't taken seriously by these systems, like, at all, and it's really troubling.
Yeah, no, and it's crazy because like you said about the runaway laws, like at least here in California where I am, from what I understand, running away, like the minor running away itself isn't a crime, but harboring a runaway is a crime. Like if a runaway comes over your place and they don't have their parents' consent, then you have to report it to the police, where they will just simply bring the minor back to their parents. And where the parents can easily and likely will abuse the child in so many unthought of ways.
And a lot of the times the parents will punish the kid for trying to get out. Like if the kid runs away and then the police brings him back, they're going to get abused even worse. Like,
exactly.
And that's why people are so afraid to try to get out. Like, I mean, you said when you had the situation of calling the police and everything, the mom treated your friend even worse after that because of what they did. So it's like kids are punished for trying to escape. They're punished both, by their parents. So it's like it makes it to where they don't even want to try. So they're just trapped and they're put down by the system because they just don't have a way out.
Exactly. And to make matters even worse, it's like I said, his mom works in the school cafeteria, so he still has to be around her when he is at school. And what's really devastating about that is that not only does it make it an unsafe space for him, but someone like her who literally will judge and discriminate for transgender or any kind of identity or belief, like, he should not be able to work in a high school cafeteria where he is interacting face to face with high school students every single day. Because if he's like that to my friend, who knows what he might be saying to other students?
Yeah, for sure. And especially in a state like like California, where for the most part it's like being LGBTQ is accepted at least a lot more than it is in other states, like a lot more conservative
Right.
states. So it's like I imagine a lot of the kids, a lot more of them would, lean towards that being queer in some way. So if she's sitting there as
Yeah.
a in the cafeteria worker just like hating all of them and like, who knows, what if she's treating them differently? What if she's like being ruder to them? What if she's like doing like worse stuff to them, and it's like that shouldn't be acceptable at all because you know how she treats your friend at home, and so who's to say she's not doing that to other people?
Exactly. And what's also really unfortunate is that like he has to literally live in that kind of stuff every day. And like when I met him in March of 2025, it was in our art class that I met him.
Mm-hmm.
And our art teacher is also a very good person. Like our art teacher is very good, very supportive, and really is the kind of person who will speak up for people who need help and who need to be supported. Like I said before, I was really struggling during my senior year with emotional stuff and stuff I was dealing with at home and
Mm-hmm.
everything like that, since I was personally in the foster care system. And so when I was struggling with all that, the art teacher was very sweet, very supportive, and allowed me and my friend to both interact and to both laugh and talk together and just enjoy art class as a very safe space.
Well, that's good that y'all had that as a resource.
Yeah.
A lot of schools, going back to the parental notification laws, a lot of schools are doing other things where it's like teachers aren't even allowed to call the kids by different names or like different pronouns or something unless like they get parental consent for that. And then a lot of times they're not even allowed to put up things like, oh, this is a safe space for, queer people, or they have to like take down like LGBTQ flags and stuff.
And trans teachers themselves are not allowed to correct students on their name or pronouns.
Wow.
This is a thing in Florida that has caused, like, specifically a lot of the. I have seen so many accounts from trans teachers leaving Florida for this
Mm-hmm.
reason of that they are required to basically go back into the closet at their job,
Wow.
which means that there are fewer safe adults around.
Yeah. And it just goes back to just
Yeah, and
being.
like you said, like California is one of the laws that has is one of the states that has more supportive laws for LGBTQ people right now, and like it's part of why I feel like happy and lucky that we are in that state, because if we were in one of the other states like Texas or Florida, me and my friend would be having it much worse than he has it right now, and
Mm-hmm.
I would be even more desperate to help him because it would be even worse than it is right now. Because at least the art teacher can support him
Mm-hmm.
and like provide the safe space that the art teacher provides. But in like we said, in a state like Florida or Texas, the teacher would be forced to not do any of that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
very unfortunate because it's like school is not just about academic stuff. School is also about a safe space for high school students, and a space where high school students can receive the support they need, especially if they have a rough home life, and especially
Mm-hmm.
since high schoolers are transitioning into adulthood and are about
Mm-hmm.
ready to go into the real world and really become adults, and they need that support and that extra care and support from their teachers, who are supposed to not just teach them material lessons but also provide support for them. And when I went to the school I went to for my senior year, the teachers, like I said, were very supportive. Like I had at least 3 teachers who were super supportive of me personally and the mental health struggles I was going through, including that art teacher. And like another teacher of mine stood up for me when I was getting bullied and like made sure I felt protected and safe in her classroom. So we really do need teachers like that on
Mm-hmm.
school campuses who are supportive and understanding and actually provide a safe space for the students.
Yeah, for sure. And like the laws that we were mentioning about punishing teachers for that, it's like they're punishing teachers for being nice, for like being supportive and being like a good person. It's like that's what young people need out of their teachers. They don't want someone who's gonna like not take any of their concerns seriously, someone who's gonna like be rude and like not be supportive of them. They need a teacher who's gonna be nice and like be like what you were describing. And these laws is basically like, no, you're not allowed to be nice, or you're not allowed to be supportive, you're not allowed to be respectful to your kids. And it's ridiculous. It's like, why are you punishing people for being nice? Like, it's just high schoolers, middle schoolers, that's when they're developing their identity. Like, that's when they're developing who they are as a person. And a lot of that can be identity revolving around like gender identity or sexuality or stuff like that. And that's where they're developing those things, and a lot of that development needs to happen independently of their parents. So they don't just like become like a clone of their parents. They need to have that like place where they can have access to information. They can like have access to other like types of relationships, like with teachers and friends and like other people who can provide different viewpoints of, going into what's, making them them. So
Exactly.
for schools to just be like, you don't get that, like, you basically, everything has to go back to your parents every single time, and other people aren't allowed to like support you or respect you. It's ridiculous, and it's really harmful to to young people's development.
It really, really is, and it worries me because it's like we were all just saying, like, there are laws being developed where teachers are basically going to get punished for being nice, and they're going to get punished for supporting the students and for letting the students be who they are when they may not be able to do that at home. And it's just completely horrible and tragic for those students. And what also kind of scares me is that it just scares me because it's like, imagine what they're going to try to do after that and how else they're going to try to hurt the kids. Like, next thing you know, they're going to be trying to control how the kids interact with each other at the school.
There was a case where I don't think this was in the US, but it was like kids speaking another language on the bus or something. And then like a bus driver got like really upset with the kids and like yelled at the kids over speaking another language on the bus. And it's just like, some people are just really discriminatory, and being discriminatory based on like sexuality or gender identity, that's also connected to other types of discrimination, like against people of different races, different ethnicities, like sexism, stuff like that. I mean, it all ties back. And I feel like by these schools developing these laws that are basically encouraging people to be discriminatory in one way, it's kind of greenlighting people to be discriminatory in other ways towards young people.
Exactly. And people have fought for non-discriminatory laws and rights. People who were discriminated against have literally fought for those rights that we have today, but it almost feels like the government is trying to take those back away from us and basically reinforce discrimination. And also, one thing that I look at it as is because I know for a fact that years ago, women were the property of men, and women could not do anything on their own without the man's permission. And so that's why we have women's rights nowadays, and women have equal rights as men. And what kind of is horrible is that just for women to get rights and be treated like a real human with real emotions and needs, they had to fight and advocate and protest for years, and that even led to some women dying for their advocacy for women's rights. And it's kind of sad because it's like you almost have to wonder and feel like that's how it's going to be for youth to get their rights and be treated like humans rather than the property of their parents.
For sure, for sure. And I do feel like discrimination against young people and against minors is like some of the most socially accepted discrimination. Like, it's socially acceptable to just be like, oh yeah, you young people, you don't know what you're talking about. You're stupid, you're incompetent, you're less intelligent, and like you shouldn't have these rights to do these certain things. And it's like, it's a lot of it's systematic too. I mean, like and not even against minors, it's against young people in general. Like, there's laws, people under 25 can't run to be like a representative or something. Like, imagine if they put a law like that against like anyone else, like, oh, like people of this certain race can't run to be representative, or like women weren't allowed to. It's like, that's discrimination. We've moved as a society, we've moved past that. We've been trying to move past this discrimination. But with young people, systematic discrimination is now just like seen as acceptable. And it's just, especially in the culture, like it's a social thing as well, not just within laws. It's like culturally, a lot of people in these who have these like traditional ideals just view as like parents, men on top, and then like with the wives down there, and then the children are just like property. They're just like basically owned, and like the parents should have authority to do whatever they want, like parents' rights over kids' medical autonomy or education or any of that. And when they say parents' rights, that means just taking away rights from the young people, like the rights that parents that there's want parents to have. Those are rights that the young people should be having to control their own lives, but they're getting those rights taken away from them like so often. You frame something as rights and make it sound like, oh, you're the good guy, like, oh, parents' rights, I just want rights, like it makes it sound like you're the good guy. But when you actually look into it, no, like these things are like terrible. And I've mentioned this in the last podcast too, like the end goal of parents' rights, like the extreme of what is being worked towards is, like I mentioned, in Idaho, there's a law where minors can't even contact the suicide hotline without a parent's consent. And they frame it as parents' rights over kids' medical autonomy. But that is what happens. That is what the end goal of what these states are working towards, is just to strip rights from young people systematically to where they can't do anything. They don't have a way to escape their parents. They don't have a way to escape these situations. They're just seen as property, and they don't have a choice in so many things about their lives that they need to have a choice over.
Yeah, and like I agree with that, because it's like we are discriminated against as young people, and like you said, not even just minors, but just young people in general are being discriminated against and being treated like they are stupid, and like they have no knowledge, they have no maturity, like they are not humans, is what they are trying to frame us young people as. And like, for example, as an 18-year-old, it's like I feel like I have a hard time finding a job, because every employer nowadays expects you to have years of experience on your hands. Even if it says in the policy must be 18 or older, they still expect you to have years upon years of experience. And it's like, how do you expect that out of an 18-year-old?
Yeah.
So for the system to be trying to frame it as all young people are dumb, stupid, and immature, it's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And to bring this back to trans rights, there are now there's proposed legislation to try and like raise the age. And they've banned gender affirming care for minors. They're trying to raise that age to 25, wow, which is obviously a stepping stone towards banning it altogether.
For sure.
That when we tie medical autonomy to age, it means that you've given, like, you're marking out that there are circumstances where people can be denied this medical autonomy, which allows you to discriminate freely against anyone.
Yeah. And it's discrimination against immutable factors. Like, you can't control your age. That's not something about yourself that you can control. Like, so it's not focusing on the context of an individual. And I feel like a lot of the times these things, they look at just someone's age. Like what you were mentioning, Bailey, about like with the jobs. I mean, they look at your age and they're just like, oh yeah, 18, probably incompetent. But they don't look at the context of an individual, of like what they've experienced, how their brain works, like how they've, like what they've gone through. And it's just like how smart and how competent each individual person is. They just look at, oh, all young people automatically incompetent, automatically can't make decisions for themselves, automatically don't deserve medical autonomy, or like can't work this job, or, you know, don't deserve these basic rights, like can't vote and stuff like that. And it's just, they just put these arbitrary blanket regulations on people. And it just puts an entire group of people down by basically saying that, like, oh, this 17-year-old over here, he's getting his rights denied to him because, like, oh, a 9-year-old would be, like, shouldn't have this right. It's ridiculous, and it's arbitrary, and it's focusing on entirely the wrong things.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, like you said, it's very unfortunate and very wrong of them to be discriminating against young people. And another thing too, it's like I was saying about my friend, like he literally has to keep his pronouns and identity separate from what he truly identifies as when he's around his mom, and I have to call him by whatever his mom calls him by when I'm around her, when I'm talking to her. And it's just very horrible, because it's like, as someone who understands what it's like to be hurt and to not feel safe, I know exactly the feeling overall that he's going through, and that's why I'm always trying to be here for him and trying to treat him as he deserves to be treated, as a human with real needs and emotions, and who should have the ability to identify as who he really feels like he is at his core. And his mom clearly does not think that way, and she's clearly wanting to be able to control everything about him and who he is, which is very unacceptable and very not right or okay of her. And like, it just really is not good, because I have to basically call him by what his mom calls him by when I'm around her, just to keep him and myself safe. And it honestly really upsets me.
Yeah, and a lot of the times, like, the laws, they just give the parents the ability to do this. They're like, oh yeah, it's okay that you're doing this. This isn't child abuse. This isn't anything bad. But, you know, if it's getting to the point where it's damaging someone's mental health, it's damaging their emotional well-being, it's making it to where they would rather run away than live in this home. It's like, obviously that is child abuse. And there's such a high threshold for it. And parents just get the ability to do so many things to discriminate against their children. They're just like allowed to, and that's such a big problem. And these things definitely need to be reformed, and we need to really reanalyze the way that we look at child abuse, especially like when it's the young person being affected, like mentally, on a mental level, where it's not like, oh, they're obviously being like neglected or something. It's something where it's like just affecting their mental health and stuff like that. I mean, there's been circumstances where, like, I mean, you mentioned in the other previous podcast episode where it's like there's been circumstances where people are having suicide attempts and they still weren't taken seriously. And it's just it's ridiculous how young people just aren't taken seriously in general. They're just seen as, you know, you can get over it. Like, this is just what your parents are doing. Like, this is just, it's either, oh, it's discipline, or, oh, it's parenting, or, oh, just listen to your parents. And they really don't care about the actual intricacies of how it's affecting someone's life.
Exactly. And as we have also discussed, like when the youth experience the long-term emotional effects of how their parents treat them, a therapist or a psychiatrist or whatever will label them as mentally ill and put all these diagnostic labels on them and say that they need medication, but they won't even think about what kind of environment the minor might be in.
Yeah.
They won't even think about what kind of treatment that minor is receiving. They just see the minor as someone who needs to be mentally diagnosed and given mental medications, which is what I experienced when I was still a minor. Like, I was basically labeled with medical and mental diagnoses, but then as soon as I turned 18 and escaped that toxicity, I started feeling better. I started feeling more peaceful. And eventually I got off of all those medications, which goes to show that my mental health issues were environmentally caused. And that's what's crazy, is that they didn't ever think to look into my environment. They just thought that I was just like that, and that was just my brain chemistry.
For sure. And, you know, a lot of that times, that's also a specific thing with queer youth, is they'll act like, oh, you're mentally ill or something for the way you identify, and then they put all these labels on people, and it's just wrong to just kind of put people in these boxes.
And I want to say that, like, with trans youth, even supportive parents can be, like, in tying medical autonomy, tying any sort of autonomy to what the parent thinks can still be harmful, even with the most well-meaning of parents.
Yeah.
My parents are supportive of my identity, but I don't think they would have signed off on me legally changing my name before I turned 18. Like, that's a thing that I'm still working on in my own life.
Yeah.
At age 22. Same with starting hormones. I didn't start hormones until I was 20. And that, like, even when parents are trying to support their child, what a child is able to, what control a child is able to take over their own body, over their own social life, is dependent on how informed the parent is.
Mm-hmm.
The parent is probably not going to be properly informed.
Yeah.
Like in my parents' case, it was purely a ignorance issue. Like they were in a culture that is largely transphobic, and so had internalized a lot of ideas that weren't true.
Yeah.
And it meant that I got medicalized, but my identity got medicalized by medical professionals who were not involved with my family because they were medical professionals. My parents trusted what they said. Specifically, I had a endocrinologist say that because I had slightly above average testosterone levels for a young girl, that might be why I was at the time identifying as a lesbian.
It's weird. And you talked about the culture, about the culture is especially with what I was talking about this propaganda of just with these governments saying all these terrible things about LGBTQ.
And it's also just very, very wrong because for a medical professional to be trying to medically diagnose someone just because of who they identify as, that's just very, very wrong. Why are they trying to medicalize who you want to be and who you feel like you are? Why are they trying to medicalize that and make it sound like it's a medical issue that needs to be treated? And plus, I can guarantee you that those doctors that are like that, they probably wish that there was some medication to make you not identify that way, but it's that's not possible. That is not realistically possible. So it's how are you trying to medicalize what someone identifies as, even though you know deep down that it's not like you can develop some medication to change who somebody wants to be.
Yeah. And that's what they tried to do with conversion therapy. They tried to just be let's just torture kids into not identifying this certain way, or historically it was really bad. They did nausea-inducing drugs to try to associate homosexuality with all these negative emotions. Be oh, if we do this, it will turn them straight or whatever. But it's are you not looking at it objectively to be you're torturing kids into thinking that something's wrong? So it's it's just such a wrong, such a backwards way that certain people view these things, especially when it comes to young people.
Those specific conversion practices are still legal in a lot of places.
Wow.
Also.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately so. And it's not okay because they should not be trying to torture you just to make you try to say that you're somebody who you do not want to be, or who you do not feel like you are. And it goes back to the point where it's we, at the end of the day, we are all human. We all have needs and emotions, and we all are unique in our own ways. And we should not be having those around us trying to force us to be somebody who we are not.
And it's, again, such a big issue with parents who aren't supportive, because it's they think to themselves, oh, if I punish them enough, if I treat them bad enough, basically they're oh, maybe they'll just go back to being normal. That's the viewpoint that they have, and it just leads to these horribly discriminatory behaviors by parents. And it's parents should be the ones that are supporting the kids, that are protecting their kids, because in a lot of circumstances that's all the kids have. If they try to run away to another family, it's they can get arrested, they can be taken back. The person who's trying to harbor them can get consequences. And then if CPS and the police don't recognize the issues and they don't care, then that's it. It's they don't have another choice. So it's parents have such an important role of just protecting and supporting their kids, and the ones that don't respect that role, it can just completely ruin someone's life, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. And also, another thing I want to point out is as we clearly know, my friend who has clearly been abused and hurt by his mom, he does not deserve that. And what makes me even more sad about it for him is not only does his mom judge and abuse and discriminate against him, but also that same friend of mine, because a lot of youth who are in situations like that where they're being abused, they end up normalizing that abuse, and
Mm-hmm.
they end up thinking to themselves like, well, if this is how I'm always treated, wouldn't that mean that that's the right way to treat everybody around me too?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of youth who are in toxic home environments with toxic people around them, they think that that's just how you're supposed to be out there, and so they end up bullying everybody around them because that's all they know. That's all they know how to do.
Yeah.
And so what really impresses me, but also makes me sad at the same time, is despite how my friend is treated and how much his mom judges and discriminates against him, he still is so sweet to me. Like, and when I was a senior in high school, like I said, I was going through a lot of hard stuff, and my friend is 16 and was 15 when I met him, and he was a freshman. Now he's a sophomore, but he's also like younger than me, and he was supporting me and helping me and was always by my side, and to this day is still by my side. And
Mm-hmm.
because I've graduated and he's still a sophomore, a lot of people in that kind of circumstance would have already distanced themselves and faded away their friendship. But the fact that I have been out of school for months now, almost a year, and he's still in school and he maintains that bond with me, it makes me happy that we both have each other and that we both have our bond and have each other's support. But it also comes back to the point where it's like he notices that I actually supported and accepted him for who he
Yeah.
was. And it's almost like I'm one of the very few people who actually support him for who he is. And it's sad because it's like, I shouldn't be the only one who supports
Mm-hmm.
him. He should be surrounded by support.
Yeah.
And one other thing I remember specifically is that when we shared art class together last school year, um, because I was going through such hard times, I specifically, one time I asked him, I was like, where would I be without you? And
Oh.
so I asked him that, and his response was like, probably up there.
Oh.
I was like, this friend of mine knows how much he means to me, and he isn't even backing away from his role as my lifeline of
Yeah.
support. And that's part of the reason why I feel like our friendship is still close to this day,
Mm-hmm.
because clearly we are connected on a much deeper level than you
Yeah.
might believe. And it's like we're both able to just support each other and be there for each other through the hard times, which is so beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. And a lot of the times it's that found family that matters a lot. It's like the people who will support you and the people that will respect you and the people that will be there for you when like your original family, like your parents and stuff won't. And I really like that message. But it's been about an hour, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up. But I really like ending off on that like wholesome, positive message. Is there any like last thoughts that either of y'all want to give on the situation?
Just be yourself and don't let those around you determine who you are.
Just second what Bailey said.
Yeah, for sure. And thank y'all both for coming on. I really hope that this did something to kind of get that message out there of just that parents should be supportive of their kids, and that because really that's all they have for the most part, and unless they get that really good found family that y'all were describing. So yeah, thank y'all both for coming on. This was a great episode, and I'll see everyone next time.